Hey everybody, today I'm talking about my top 10 push your luck games. So I personally really enjoy this genre of games because I find they have a real visceral tension and a real excitement to them that makes you leaving wanting more and more and more, and inevitably the more greedy you get, you're going to leave with nothing. I think I've got 10 games here that put a real unique twist and slant on that genre of games, and hopefully there's something here for you that piques your interest. So at number 10 I have The Grizzled. Now, The Grizzled is interesting because it is fully cooperative and it is set in the trenches of World War II. Now, the idea is that we're trying to play these cards out and try not to get 3 or more symbols of a certain type. So you've got like your bombshells, you've got your whistles and your gas masks, and you're also trying not to get duplicates of the different terrains as well. So you've got like your snow and your rain and so on. But it's quite in fact, it's a very difficult game to win because you've got to get through this whole big deck of cards. But the more you bite off, the harder it is to actually get through them. But if you don't do enough, then you end up suffering more. And throughout the game, all the players kind of accrue these really difficult hardships and traumas, which can really bog you down and make you suffer things such as not being able to communicate with your teammates and things like that. And it's a game where you're trying to go as far as you can, but knowing when to back out and retreat, because if you get too many of these traumas, I think it's 4 or more, then you are eliminated. And once everybody's retreated, you can actually play these tokens to try and kind of eradicate those traumas that they've suffered to make them a bit more powerful going forward, or at least trying to shed off those those negative abilities. It's a really good fun. It's quite a poignant game, set in the World War trenches. So it's a real different kind of perspective on that genre. And I really love the aesthetic of this game as well. It has real unique artwork, that kind of cartoony style. And it was actually illustrated by Tignes, who worked for Charlie Hebdo, and he was actually murdered in the terrorist massacre a few years ago. So that adds a kind of new layer of kind of poignancy to it. I really like that. So a real unique game, and I personally enjoyed it, but be prepared to lose because it is extremely difficult. At number 9, I have Port Royal. This one is by Alexander Pfister, who's known for his real heavy involved Euro games. So quite interesting to see a quick, light, pushy luck style game. But this one's quite cool because your turn is going to consist of drawing cards from a deck, and you're trying to stop before you draw 2 ships of the same colour. And below that mechanism, there is quite a bit of a game below as well, because you're essentially trying to collect these different symbols in order to, or fulfil these contracts really, to get more points. But there are different routes you can go down to build a bit of an engine, such as gaining more money when you do things, or collecting these swords, which means that when you draw certain ships, you can actually fight them off, meaning that you can push further and further. But I also like the fact that when you choose to, when you've drawn your card and you choose to stop, you get to draw a certain amount of cards depending on how many ships you've drawn. So you're almost incentivized to push your luck. But also, once you've selected your cards, the other players can choose to buy cards from the piles that you've just drawn, paying you. And that's cool because you're, again, more incentivized to pull more cards out so that your opponents have more of an option to select from and going to give you money for it. So a really nice game. It's a lot of fun. And again, I like that element of being a game underneath that single push your luck mechanism. So at number 9, I have Port Royal. At number 8, I have Biblios. Now, Biblios is, I think, one of the best filler games out there, full stop. A really nice game about collecting these different manuscripts and things. And the thing I like about this game is it's divided into 2 halves. So the first half of the game is where the push your luck comes in, because you are going to be drawing cards off the top of the deck one at a time, and you're going to either be choosing to keep one for yourself, choose to put one in the kind of offering for the other players to take from, and also putting one in the deck ready for auctioning in the second phase of the game. And that's really cool because because you're drawing one at a time, you just don't know whether this is the time to cut my losses here, or at least to take what I've got here and be happy with that, or do I risk drawing another card and giving this one to my opponents in the hope that I'm going to get something even better. That's really cool. Essentially, it's a set collection game where you are trying to collect all these different books of a certain type, And then as the game goes on, the value of those different sets are going to fluctuate. And whoever's got the most of a certain set at the end of the game is going to score the points based on that value that's been changed throughout the game. Really fun, extremely clever. And I just, again, I love that tension of whether, is this going to be enough for me, or shall I be a bit greedy and take another dive? So that is Biblios at number 8. At number 7, I have No Thanks. Now, No Thanks is a strange kind of concept in terms of the Push Your Luck. It's a rather simple filler game where you are basically bidding or choosing, put tokens down to not take a card, because the objective is to get as few points as possible. The person with the lowest score is going to win. But the idea of choosing to bite the bullet and just push your luck is quite palpable, because every time that a card isn't going to get selected, you put a token on it, which kind of builds up and builds up and builds up. And eventually someone's going to think, that there's too many tokens on there for me not to take it. And when you take it, all those tokens on that card is going to count as negative points, which is a good thing. But the push your luck element here is because all the cards, I think they're numbered from 1 to say 35 or 36. You only score for your lowest card in each run. So if you had, say, the 22 and the 23 and the 24, you only score for the 22. But that creates this real kind of tension where you start taking different cards and you try to fill in the gaps in between them to try and make that run as long as possible, so you score as few points as possible. But because a certain amount of cards are taken out at the beginning of the game, you don't know if those gaps are even going to be able to be filled in. And that is so much fun. And when it does get pulled off and you do really, bite off a lot and try to push your luck to the point where, you can really get away with a lot, then when it pays off, it really pays off. And I really like that about No Thanks. At number 6, I have Coloretto. Now, Coloretto is a really interesting set collection game where you're trying to collect these different sets of these chameleons, and you score at the end of the game for your 3 most numerous sets of those chameleons. But any chameleon that you have isn't in one of those 3 sets is going to score you negative points based on the same kind of scaling ability. So scoring more than 3 really isn't a good thing. And the cool thing about this is that when you draw these cards, you're either kind of drawing cards put on one of these columns, or you are choosing to take a column for your scoring. You can choose to be a bit greedy and hope to get more from your turn. But at the same time, because you can either only do one of those 2 actions and it goes onto your opponents, your opponents are always trying and throw a bit of a spanner in the works and give you cards that you don't want because they're going to score negative points. So I really like that idea of choosing when to cut your losses and choose to, be happy with what you've got, because sometimes it'll pay off, and sometimes it really won't. But that decision is always there, and it's a lot of fun, so easy and quick to explain, and I think a real staple to anybody's game collection. I think it's almost an essential at this point. That is Coloretto at number 6. At number 5, I have The Big Score. Now, this is a game that really flew under the radar. It came out probably a couple of years ago now. And it's a game about trying to gather this crew of burglars, I suppose, and these criminals, trying to rob a bank. But the game is divided into 2 very distinct phases. The first one being a card drafting game, where you are blind bidding on these different heists. And the cool thing is here that all the different buildings that you're trying to burgle from offer you different rewards, but they need a certain criteria of people to fulfill that heist, such as you need drivers, you need a hired muscle, you need your hackers and stuff. But everybody is blind bidding on these different locations. But the cool thing is that even if you've only contributed 1 card to fulfilling that criteria and your opponent's offered loads, then you still get all the rewards from it. So you can really be a bit greedy and try and spread yourself and try to get loads of different rewards and not contributing much, or you can be a bit more certain in yourself and fully commit to something and try to get rewards that way. So that's one aspect of Push Your Luck that I like. But the second part of the game is where it really shines, where you are essentially all grabbing into this huge bag of tokens and drawing loot out, and they're going to give you points, or the objective is to get as much money as you can, and they're going to give you money in lots of different ways, such as collecting more diamonds to get you more set collection and things like that. But what I really like about this one is is that the first part of the game can link into the second part of the game, because the first part of the game you're getting all these hard drives, but in the second part of the game, if you draw the memory sticks that plug into those hard drives, then you're going to get a lot of money for doing so. And the idea is that you're going to keep leaning into this bank and trying not to draw a certain amount of these police tokens, because as soon as a threshold of police tokens is reached, then everybody still digging into that bag is going to be eliminated. So it's a game where you've got to think about, you know what, I'm going to give it one more go, or going to think, you know, I've had enough here, I'm satisfied, I can't afford for the police token to be drawn, because if it does, then I'm going to lose everything. So I really like that. It's really fun, and I think a game that's very much underappreciated and would be a big hit if more people knew about it. That is The Big Score at number 5. At number 4, I have Celestia. Celestia is a gorgeous looking game based on this, I suppose, this Zeppelin, and you all the players start in a Zeppelin, and the idea is you're trying to roll these dice with all these different symbols on, and you're trying to match those symbols on those dice with cards in your hand. And the idea is if you match those cards, then you get to travel to the next location, and each location you go to is going to give you more and more points, basically. And the cool thing about this is that there is also an element of bluffing in this game, because each player takes turns being the captain of that ship, and you're trying to convince the other players who are all sharing that ship whether they should stay in the ship or whether they should jump out because you haven't got the cards to match those dice rolls. That's really fun. You know, you can really bluff and try to convince people to jump out or to stay in. And you know, the more you hold your nerve and stay in and get lucky with matching those dice with your cards, you can really push right to the end to get a lot of points. And you know, you're rewarded for being brave. And I really like that. It's a really nice aesthetic to the game. Pretty simple to explain, but there are some other kind of additional wrinkles to it where you can play cards to, you know, kind of keep people back and make them forced to jump out and things. But ultimately, it's a really simple push-your-luck game that works really well. At number 3, I have Ra. Now, Ra is probably the most, in fact, it definitely is the most involved game on this one. It's an auction-style game, a very classic auction-style game by Reiner Knizia, where you are basically have a number of tokens in your kitty that have different bids on them. And you are going to be drawing, on your turn list, you're going to be drawing tokens from a bag and placing them out onto the board. But whenever you draw a Ra tile, it's going to instantly trigger an auction. And the idea is that you have these number of tokens and you can only place one bid when it comes around to your turn. So it's a single bid auction, which is unique in itself. But the push-your-luck aspect comes here, is that you've got to know when to use those tokens. Because for every Ra token that comes out, it's going to be edging towards the end of the round. And there's only ever 3 rounds in the game, and at the end of each round there's going to be a scoring phase. And if you choose to be a bit greedy and not to spend your tokens, then you can actually end up really shooting yourself in the foot and leaving with nothing in this game. But at the same time, it can really pay off by waiting for all players to use their auction tokens. So when it's your turn, you keep drawing and drawing tokens and hopefully fill up the whole spread by only paying a few, a very low value token to win all that lot. And that for me is so much fun. It really is a game that can reward being brave or can really shoot you in the foot for being brave. And I really like that about Ra. I think it's extremely strong set collection game, but that push your luck aspect really shines through for me. And that for me is why Ra is at number 3. At number 2, I have The Quacks of Quedlinburg. Now, I expect that probably this would be a lot of people's anticipated number 1, because this game, it really did blow up, and it is a pure push-your-luck game, and it's also a bag building game as well. So the idea in this game is that you are drawing tokens from your bag to add to your little potion, and you're trying not to make your potion explode by drawing out a certain number of white tokens. But from game to game, the further you're going to go up this track, and you're going to basically spend your currency to buy new tokens to add to your bag, which can do lots of weird and wonderful things, such as, you know, making you put white tokens you draw back into the bag, or giving you basically boosts by playing certain tokens next to each other and things like that. There's so much different variability here, loads of tokens that work with each other in weird and wonderful ways. But that real tension of, you know, am I going to draw another token to get to that next jump in points and potentially get a bonus? Or am I just going to cut my losses here and say, you know what, I'm happy with what I've got, I'm going to take a nice amount of points, and I'm also going to get a nice amount of currency to buy new tokens for my bag. A lot of fun. a real nice family weight game, and I can certainly see why this one is a massive hit out there. I've never played this game with anybody who hasn't enjoyed it, because it has a real fun and just a raw tension to it that just, you know, it's just enjoyable each time. So that is Quacks of Quedlinburg at number 2. And finally, at number 1 is Push. Now, Push is a rather simple card game and a dice rolling game that works similarly to Coloretto, actually. But this one you have, I think it's 6 different colours, and each of those colours are numbered from 1 to 6 as well, as you've got different colours and different numbers on those cards. And on your turn, you are going to draw cards out, basically playing in 3 different columns, and you are not allowed to either duplicate a colour or a number on each of the columns. But for every column, well, when you choose to stop and take a column, you're going to get all those as points. But when you take a column, they are divided into different piles based on their colours. And even though they are points for you at the end of the game, it doesn't mean they're safe, because there are some cards in that deck of cards where that forces you to roll this dice. And when you roll the die, you actually eliminate any card that isn't banked of that matching colour on that die. And for me, that is so much fun, because you can really end up stockpiling on a certain colour, and if you roll it, you're going to lose all of them. Or you can sacrifice your whole turn to bank a certain colour, meaning that it cannot be touched for the rest of the game, and it's safe in your score pile. And I also love the way that you can force other people to do it as well. You can be really clever and try to avoid banking at all, and I hope it pays off that way, which I've seen work. But you've got to be really careful, because one of the die faces is actually forces you to lose every card that you've got saved. And when that happens, it is just a laugh out loud moment, so much fun. And for me, this is definitely the strongest example of a push your luck game that I've played. Everyone I've played it with has enjoyed it, because I think it's hard not to when you are pushing your luck that far. And that's what this game is all about. So at number 1, and you know, just edged it over Quacks of Quedlinburg for me, this one is Push. So I hope you've enjoyed this top 10 list. I've enjoyed talking about these games because they're all a lot of fun. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.